All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Geographic, and I'll be your host for today. If you've been tuning in all month long, you know that we have been celebrating conservation. We've been talking to scientists, explorers, and conservationists from all over the world who have dedicated their lives to protecting important ecosystems as well as the amazing biodiversity of life found within them. So it's been a pretty awesome month so far. We've got about another week to go of exciting events. So if you head over to exploringbytheseat.com, you can still find several more events that can take you around the world to Rwanda, to South America, and even down into Indonesia. So lots of events still coming up to wrap up this month. Let's get on to today's event. Today, I'm really excited to be hosting Jessica Cramp. She is a shark researcher, a marine conservationist, and a National Geographic explorer who is passionate about stopping the over-exploitation of sharks and the degradation of our oceans. So she lives in the Cook Islands, where she manages the locally based Pacific Islands Conservation Initiative, and she helped co-champion the grassroots campaign that worked into a ton of international community support, resulting in an over 700,000 square mile Cook Islands shark sanctuary. And she's recently just authored a book with Nat Geo Kids called Captain Aquatica's Awesome Ocean. So geared towards middle school. Sounds like it's a textbook with lots of great graphic comics and such, which would be really awesome for students of the age who are tuning in with us today. So I'm going to bring Jess in live with us. Jess, it's so great to have you joining us live from the Cook Islands today.
Thanks, guys. Hello to everyone. Good morning here in the Cook Islands. It's 9 a.m. and I'll show you guys a map of where I am so you have a real understanding of the distance between us and how cool it is that we can talk to each other live today.
All right. Awesome. Well, Jess, it's so great to see you. Definitely tell it's morning. We could hear the rooster calling a little bit earlier in the call, but I'm going to let you take over for a little bit and share your screen, and then we're going to let the classrooms fire away because I know they're going to have a ton of questions.
That sounds good. So I will let you guys know, I do live with a lot of roosters around, and pigs and dogs, so you may hear all sorts of animals. You can have a chance to giggle and you can laugh about it later with me. I'll share my screen and then we'll get started. Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, I think we just have to hit the swap up at the top again, Jess.
Okay, I don't have that. So let's try again. I don't have a swap option today. Let's see, let's try again. We'll try again.
I think we did full screen work for us last time.
Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. We'll try this again. All right, do you see a photo of me?
We do. Magic. We got it, Jess.
All right, so this is a photo of me at work. So sometimes I'm out at sea for long periods of time, and I wanted to show you this photo first because this is actually me in my element. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about what that means, what my job looks like, and yeah, what some of that work entails, the good and the bad. So first, though, I want to tell you that I have two animals that I love dearly. This is my crazy dog, Levi, who always sleeps in funny positions on the left. And this is my chicken on the right. And she was looking like a lion yesterday, so I had to take this photo. I run an organization called Sharks Pacific. You guys can check us out online, and we have a YouTube channel with some videos. But we work on research, outreach, which is what I'm doing today, talking to you guys, sharing stories, and then also in the policy space. So that means conservation, like Joe had said, creating laws that help to protect sharks, that also consider the people that need to eat the fish and live alongside the sharks. This is a video of the island of Rarotonga. This is in the Cook Islands, and this is actually where I live. So the island is 19 miles around and going very slowly, maybe 30 miles an hour. It takes us only 45 minutes to go around the entire island. So this is where I'm calling you from today. And here's a map. So I'm from the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and I think there's some classes from PA today. So hi to you guys. So Rarotonga Cook Islands is a tiny dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, here where the red pin is. And then if you go all the way to the Poconos, it's over 6,000 miles. So it's 11,000 kilometers. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool that you guys are able to tune in and let me talk to you today from here. So what I'm showing you now, this is actually the outline of the country of the Cook Islands. So I know that you all know what the outline of Canada and the outline of the United States looks like. And those boundaries are our land boundaries and they're hard. But here in the Cook Islands, we are what are called a large ocean state, which means that the country borders are actually just invisible lines in the ocean. So this is actually what the boundaries look like. And then those inner circles there, each of those is a 50 nautical mile ring around each island. So there are 15 islands in the Cook Islands. 13 of them are inhabited, and there's about 14,000 people in the entire country. But the water, that outer boundary that you see, is 2 million square kilometers. So it's quite big. And that's going to be important later. So I'll talk through that in a bit. Here in the Cook Islands, a lot of people interact with sharks on a regular basis. So that's a video from an island called Tongareva, which is the local name in the Cooks, where fishermen every day, they clean their catch, and these nurse sharks, they come up and they just get a feed, they say hello, and sometimes they get a pat. Nurse sharks are actually reef sharks, and I'm going to talk you guys through the different types of sharks very quickly so that you understand when I say a pelagic shark, you'll know what I mean. So the Tawny nurse shark, which we just saw in the last video, is what we consider a reef species. So they're the ones that hang out around the islands or close to shore. They don't take really long trips, so a lot of these sharks will stay within an area for the majority of their lifetime. And then other types of sharks are called open ocean or pelagic sharks. So these are the animals that spend the majority of their time, as you would guess, in the open ocean. They can travel thousands of miles, so they can go, all the way around the globe. And so these guys are able to travel in and out of those invisible ocean boundaries like you saw in the Cook Islands pretty easily, whereas the reef sharks would usually stay within that ring that you saw, that 50 nautical mile ring near the islands. So I'm also putting up a photo of a ray, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but rays are actually related to sharks because of what their skeletons are made of. So they, like sharks, have skeletons made of cartilage, and that means that when I say sharks, I'm also talking about rays. So a lot of times in literature, you'll see people saying, hey, sharks are threatened with extinction, but they actually mean sharks and rays. So I just wanted to point that out now so that if I say only sharks sometimes, you guys might say, hey, wait, she might also mean rays. So this is a manta ray. Okay, so why do I work on sharks? Well, obviously they're cool, but there are a lot of other reasons. Firstly, they've been on the planet for a very long time, so longer than the dinosaurs. They've been here over 400 million years. They're one of the oldest living vertebrates on the planet. There are over 1,250 species of sharks, and of course, I mean sharks and rays because they're cousins. So they are called cartilaginous fish, and there are a lot of them. They are important for the ocean. We know this because they've continued to evolve with the planet. So if the planet didn't think that they were important, they would have been extinct by now. This is before humans. They are able to eat the sick out of the water. They also exert what is called fear-based effects on fish. So when you see fish forming large schools and sharks coming in, they do that to protect themselves from the sharks. So what we don't know is if there were no sharks around, would the fish continue to school? And unfortunately, 25% of all species of sharks and rays are threatened with extinction. That means their populations are in trouble and they're not able to repopulate as quickly as humans are taking them out of the ocean. So humans, us, we are overfishing some of those species. So I want to be really careful and say that not all sharks are threatened with extinction. And when I say sharks, of course, I mean sharks and rays. There are some species that are thriving and doing well, but others, unfortunately, are not doing well, and we need to look after them. So I've got a photo here of a bunch of shark fins drying on a roof. Now, I know that everyone has heard of shark finning, and that is an important driver of shark populations going down. But what's also important is that it's not just shark finning anymore. It's actually shark liver oil, which is called squalene, and that's used in a lot of cosmetics, and also shark meat. So people think that they're eating another type of fish, but they're actually eating shark. So actually what's driving shark overfishing is the demand for their fins, for their meat, and for their liver oil and a few other parts. And so what am I doing to help? I'm going to talk you guys through that a bit today. Firstly, I'm doing research, so science. Everybody loves science, right? I know that I loved science when I was your age. And now I love it even more because I can see that it helps me answer questions that can help me protect the animals that I really care about. So this is a photo of my team in the Cook Islands. You can see us. One of the things that we do in order to research the sharks is we drop cameras all along the reef. Now, these are going to help us find those reef shark species, or the ones that, that hang out close to the island more frequently. So this is called a baited remote underwater video system. We call it a BRUV for short. So there's just a GoPro camera in that frame in the back, and then you can see all these fish are crowding around this canister, and I bet you can tell me why. Yes, there's food in there. So what we do is we chop up fish and we put it in that canister, and that helps attract sharks in, because what do they eat? Fish. So they will then swim in front of the camera, and it allows us to see how many sharks are in an area and which species or which different kinds. So I'm going to show you guys a video now that you can see some of the footage. So something else we're doing here, we're dropping cameras all along your reef so that we can get an understanding of which sharks are here, how big they are, and about how many. This is called a baited remote underwater video, or BRUV. Can you guys say BRUV? BRUV. So would anyone like to see what the footage looks like? So as you guys can see, we often attract a lot of sharks in front of the camera, but sometimes we don't attract any sharks at all. And that lets us know that there probably aren't that many sharks in the area, or maybe we're just there at the wrong time of year or the wrong time of day. But what we can do is we can actually compare the video footage between different islands, even between different countries, and in fact, even just between different villages along a reef. So one of the ways that we count the number of sharks that are in an area is we actually pause the video, and then we just do what I said, we count. So I want you guys to look at this picture right now and tell me how many sharks you see in the frame. So I count 2. Now, I'm going to go to a different frame, and I want you to tell me how many sharks you see. I'm going to give you a second.
You want me to put some
Okay, we'll count them together. Sorry, go ahead.
You want me to put some classes on the spot? I can talk you in.
Yeah, tell me how. Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see. Let's start with this. Maybe.
There we go. Hello. Montezor, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, no. We're just the shark image up there. Can you tell us how many sharks you think you see?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
12.
13. 13.
All right, we got about a dozen, 13. Let's pick on another class. Let's go to Mr. Cianfrini's class, see what they think.
1.
I hear a lot of 10 from that class. Jess?
Okay, here we go. We're going to count them together. Can you see my cursor? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's one hiding. 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's actually 15 sharks in this frame. And what that shows us is that this spot on the reef is probably more important for sharks than the spot that I showed you previously. So that's just one small way we're using these cameras to try to identify areas that might be important for sharks. Yeah, or even islands that might have more higher shark populations than others. And then what we'll do is we'll look at what are the factors that contribute to a higher shark population. Is it that fishermen are fishing more in the other areas? Are there more fish in this area? Is the habitat better? So these are just some of the questions that we ask. But what else is cool about these baited remote underwater videos is that we often get footage that we weren't intending. So I'm going to show you guys this one, and then you tell me what you think after. I want you to pay attention here. It looks like the octopus is boxing the fish away. So there's a few things that we learned after watching this footage. Firstly, it's cool for us to see what the animals were doing when we're not around, when we're not in the water. This is called a non-invasive way to sample. By sample, I just mean and see what's around. So this octopus not only is a boxer, which I didn't know, but we can see that it was afraid of the shark. So it retreated into its hole when the shark came by. So it's cool because these cameras also allow us to see what else is happening in the ecosystem when the sharks are or are not there. So something else that I'm doing is looking at where the sharks are going. So this is called shark tracking, or we're looking at movement patterns, if you might have heard that. So this is actually a photo of my team and I. We've caught a silky shark and we're going to place a tag on it. Now, why is that important? Remember that we talked about this invisible fence here in the Cook Islands. So what we want to know is if this protected area, so this black line that you see around the Cook Islands, that's actually a shark sanctuary, meaning that commercial vessels cannot catch or cannot kill sharks in this area. And then within that 50 nautical mile zone, so that's inside the red rings, there are no commercial vessels even allowed in there. So what we want to know is, are these big sharks, the open ocean sharks, the ones that can travel around the globe, how much of their time are they actually spending in this protected area where they might be protected from fishing versus outside in the open ocean where they could be caught by fishing vessels? So we actually tag the animals to try to help us understand that. And how do we do that? Well, I'm looking at several different species of pelagic or open ocean sharks. The first one is called an Oceanic whitetip shark. So you'll see this guy again. These guys have big paddle-like fins with white coloration on the tips of their fins. They are found in every ocean, but unfortunately, they're critically endangered with extinction. That means that their populations are in a lot of trouble, and if we don't enact specific protections for them soon, they could go extinct in our lifetimes. The second one I'm looking at is called a silky shark. Now, a silky shark looks like a lot of other sharks. A lot of fishermen tell me, hey, I saw a gray shark, and they say, what is it? And I say, well, it could be 50 different sharks. But anyway, one of them I'm looking at here is called the silky shark, and this one has a nice rounded dorsal fin, as you can see there. It's found in every ocean again. These guys are vulnerable with extinction, which means they're not in as much trouble as the oceanic whitetips, but we need to be careful so that they don't become more endangered. So this is what everyone thinks that I do when I say that I do shark research and I'm doing shark tracking. This is actually just a photo of me diving with a shark. This is a silky shark in the Galapagos Islands. And what I actually do is work with fish. Lots and lots of dead fish.
Better than chocolate.
So these are two of my research assistants. This is Emma and Charlie. And what they're doing is they're actually throwing bait out into the water. So we try to make it as fun as possible, even though we're working with some pretty gross stuff. So while the media likes to say that sharks attack humans and they'll rush in, the truth is it's really hard for us to find these animals. And in order to get them to come to the boat, we actually have to put a bunch of the stuff they like to eat in the water.
Beautiful.
Then we put hooks in the water with fish, because in order for us to actually tag them, we have to catch them first. So this is a silky shark that we caught at night, and we're about to put a tag on it. So the first thing that we have to do is we actually have to secure the shark very safely to the side of the boat. We always keep the shark in the water, and we do our best to minimize the time that it takes us to do the work to reduce the stress on the animal. So this is Tere'i and Marino. They're two local Cook Islanders that are my research assistants. And you can see Marino is putting a tail rope around the shark. Tere'i is holding onto the dorsal fin as hard as she can so that it doesn't swim away before Marino gets the tail hook on, or the tail rope on. And I am here now just driving the shark's head so that we can secure it safely. Once it's safely secured, we're going to place different tags on it. So the first one is called an identification tag. You can see here the number of this tag is 00005. And then on the other side of the tag, we put information so that if a fisher should catch this shark or should a diver see this shark, then we'll actually know. They can tell us where they saw the shark, which species it was. Then it'll allow us to know, hey, that shark, we tagged it, let's say at Rarotonga, and it was found on the island of Aitutaki. So that's just one way that the tags can help us. But what's more important, here's where the tags go. We place them in the dorsal fin. So this actually doesn't hurt the shark. We place a small hole in the dorsal fin, and then the tag is secured there. So the better way for us to identify the movement patterns of sharks is actually through these tags called satellite tags. So these don't rely on humans resighting the animal to know where they've gone. These actually track the animal using what's called the Argos satellite system. So you can see here that the tag has a nice long antenna on it, and that when it's popped off, will talk to the satellites and tell us where the shark has gone. So you can see here's a silky shark, nice rounded dorsal fin there. It has a satellite tag placed on it and also identification tag. So this satellite tag is actually pre-programmed at 12 months to pop off. So at 12 months time, there's a corrodable pin in there and that will pop off. The tag will then float on the surface and transmit all the movement data that the shark has gone to a satellite, which I can then download to my computer and map and find out where it's gone. So this is an example of shark tracks. So each one of these colors is a separate shark that my team has tagged. You'll notice that they all start sort of in the middle of the screen. So that's Rarotonga, that's the island we live on. And these are actually 3 different species of sharks. These are blue sharks, silky sharks, and oceanic whitetip sharks. Now, I haven't overlaid the Cook Islands country border here, but you will notice that over on the left-hand side of the screen, these are islands in Fiji, the country of Tonga, the country of Samoa. And so these sharks have actually gone a long way. And so what this tells me is that some of the animals have actually left the sanctuary of the Cook Islands. So something else that we do is we actually measure the animals. So this is a photo of me measuring quite a large silky shark. And the photo was snapped before I actually got the measuring tape to the edge of the snout. But we'll measure from the tip of the snout to the base of the tail. Now, these not only tell us how big the animal is, but they can tell us whether or not the animal is sexually mature, because the size of the animal actually helps us to understand whether or not they're at a place in their life where they can then start to make babies. We'll also take little pieces of their dorsal fin for a genetic sample. So this is Ru, he's one of the local fishermen here, and he's holding up a small piece of the shark for DNA. So the DNA allows us to see whether there's what's called connectivity. So that means if the sharks that we have here in the Cook Islands, if they're related to the sharks in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Indian Ocean. They also help us to positively identify different species. So remember how I said that silky sharks look like 50 other different species? Well, the genetics from these sharks can help us just to nail down exactly which species it is if we're not sure. So once we've worked up the shark, we actually release the shark back into the ocean.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. Lena, high five. We got another Oceanic.
Yes. So the reason we're so excited about this is, remember how I said that oceanic whitetip sharks are critically endangered? That means there aren't that many in the ocean, which means it takes us a really long time to actually find one. So we had been fishing for 2 weeks every day and night in order to get this one shark. So once we caught it, we quickly worked. So in under 5 minutes, we put in the tags, the measurement, we got the DNA sample, and then we released it and it swam off happily. So this is Teuru, you can see. Teuru is a young marine biologist, and this was actually the first shark that she had caught on our trip. So we were very excited. Now, while it looks like our job is extremely fun, Sometimes it's not that fun. So this is a photo of me gasping for air because there's some rotten bait on the boat. So I often have to work in conditions that aren't wonderful. Gross smells, sometimes you feel a little bit seasick. And here's just a good example of that one. Also, sometimes I'm out at sea for weeks at a time and there aren't enough beds. And so I'm sleeping covered in my wet weather gear on a yoga mat on the floor. And sometimes I sit in front of my computer and I get confused and I have to write up the information that I found. And sometimes people think that's not fun, but I actually kind of like it, even though it doesn't look like it so much here. But then other times we're out at sea and we're so surprised by what we can find. So here's James and Charlie. We were out looking for sharks and unfortunately we didn't find any of the shark species that we needed that day, but a baby whale shark came up and paid us a visit. So this is kind of some of the really exciting stuff about my job that I love. And so when you mix it in with some of the stuff that's maybe not so fun, it makes it all absolutely worthwhile. But my favorite part is that I get to work with people. So here's a couple local fishermen. I'm buying fish from them for bait, but most importantly, they are able to tell me what they see when they're on the water. How many sharks are around? Are they stealing their fish? Which species are they? Do they come at specific times of the year? Do they come at specific moon phases? So all of the work that we get to do always includes the local people because they have insight that we can't because we're not there all the time. These guys are on the water all the time. And I also get to work with kids. So I wanted to show this to you guys because while it may seem like you have to go to school for 1,000 years before you can get some of the experience that I have, you don't. You can actually volunteer with local organizations and get some experience to see if this is something that you would like to do. So these are some of the kids from the local college, which is what they call a high school here. It's Arauda College. And they came out with us for a week and they dropped baited cameras. They counted sharks. And as you can tell, of course, they also got their hands dirty and smashed some bait. So I want to say me taki mata. That's how you say thank you here in the Cook Islands. So this is just a little bit about my job. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joe and hope that you guys have some questions for me.
All right. Excellent. Well, Jess, thank you so much for that great presentation. I have no doubt that there's going to be lots of questions. And I myself spent the morning shoveling my driveway. We got our first dump of snow today. So seeing some of those island photos and being out on the water made me a little bit jealous. So thanks for sharing that amazing work that you're doing out on the ocean. Very cool. All right. Well, let's start meeting some of our classrooms and let's start grabbing some questions. So I'm going to start off. Let's see. Let's go to Toronto first. We've got some grade 6-7s hanging out with Mr. Cianfrini. Let me bring them live into the call. How we doing, Toronto?
Good, good. Cold and snowy.
I hear you.
We have a question that if the tracking device is on the shark and it gets attacked by another shark or gets caught by a fisherman, do you guys see that or how does that work?
That's a really good question. So there's several answers to it. The first one is if it is eaten by another shark, we can often tell by the depth profile. So these tags actually give us the depth of the shark. Sometimes it depends on the time frame. So we may just get it in half-hour bends or we may get it to a very fine scale resolution where we can really tell where it was every few seconds. But a lot of times the depth profiles will help us because the animal is going like this. And if we knew that we put it in, say, let's say we were tagging a shark that doesn't actually make dives down to 1,000 meters, but then the tag is going down to 1,000 meters, we know that something happened. But it can be hard to tell if it was ingested by a shark that has a similar diving profile as that one. If it is caught by a fisherman, so fishing vessels actually have quite a similar, we call that a vessel signature, so fishing vessel track. So when they're fishing, they often will travel and then stop, set lines, and then travel and then stop, set lines. So if the satellite imagery from the tag shows us a signature that looks similar to a fishing vessel, we're able to, I guess it's our best guess that it was caught by an animal. If we're really lucky, that fishing vessel would look at the ID tag and actually let us know that it caught it. That's not likely. But yeah, so there are several ways that we can try to deduce whether or not the animal was ingested or caught by a vessel.
All right, great question. Mrs. King's class, they're joining us in Pennsylvania. Let me bring them live into the call. How are we doing in Pennsylvania? Awesome.
What's the biggest shark you've seen?
The biggest shark that I've seen has been a tiger shark, and it was about 18 feet long in Western Australia. So I still haven't seen a full-size whale shark in the water. The only whale sharks I've seen are really small ones, like the one that you guys saw. So whale sharks get up to 40 feet, but I haven't seen one yet. But I have, yeah, we've caught quite large tiger sharks in West Australia.
All right, very cool. Mrs. Webb's class tuning in with us on YouTube, and they're wondering, how many sharks have you and your crew tagged? Maybe the kind of those cattle tags and the satellite tags.
Sure. So with the cattle tags, we have tagged 120-ish sharks. And then with the satellite tags, because we're targeting the species that are hard to find, we've only tagged 22. So, and that's over 2 years' time it took us to catch and tag 22 sharks.
All right, awesome. Aiden's tuning in with us online. Aiden's a student. Wondering looking at the tracking, what's the farthest distance a shark has ever covered?
Oh gosh, I don't know what the farthest distance of any shark is. I'd like to say it's over 7,000 miles. I'd have to look that up. But for us, our largest distance so far is over 3,000 miles.
All right, very cool. And then that's what makes conservation so tricky, right? You protect one area, but the shark doesn't stay in that area. It uses a lot of areas throughout the year.
That's right. And so one of the things that we use these data for is to actually talk with the fishing agencies, with other countries, and say, hey, the animals that might have been here and protected are actually traveling to your area. So can we work together to come up with a solution?
All right, awesome. We're going to take a little trip to British Columbia now. Mrs. Matthews' class, some grade 4-5s are hanging out with us. Let's bring them live in. Hey, Mrs. Matthews' crew, how are you?
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Jill. How fast do sharks swim?
How fast do they swim? I'm going to turn this over to you guys. So the fastest fish in the ocean is actually a sailfish. And the second fastest fish in the ocean is a mako shark. And then once we get off of the call, I want you guys to look up how fast a mako shark can swim. Does that sound cool? Okay.
I like it. A little homework. Sounds good. All right. Very cool. Let's see. Let's grab another classroom here. This time I'm going to go to, there they are. Mrs. Gerolami's group, they are joining us in Peterborough, Ontario, some grade 5-6s. Let's bring them in. How are we doing, grade 5-6?
Yeah. Hi. The camera's not working. One of the students has a question about how do you ever get into the water with the sharks?
Yes. So sometimes I get into the water with sharks. While that's not the primary part of my job, I have to place receivers on different float lines. And and a lot of times the sharks will come and check me out while I'm doing that. But most of the time that I'm doing my work, I'm on a boat or dropping cameras, but usually I'm on a boat. I do dive as part of my job, but not necessarily diving just to see the sharks. Most of the time that I see sharks while I'm in the water is because I'm diving for fun.
All right. I'm with you there. It's always a fun dive when you see sharks, and it's always fun when they stick around, because usually they'll come in and kind of take a little look and they're out. So it's always nice when they stick around a little bit. Okay. Let's see. A couple more YouTube ones here. Let's go with what made you decide, or what age did you know you wanted to work with sharks?
That's a great question. So I actually had no idea I wanted to work with sharks until I was about 30 years old. So I was a research biologist in a lab, and I was searching for new medicines, and I loved it, but I was inside all day long, and I love being outside. I love the ocean. And the story is a little bit too long for this question, but I ended up on a research vessel sailing across the Pacific Ocean and had an interesting encounter with sharks, while at the same time recognizing that they needed more people to both research and help protect them. And I realized that with my science background and my love of the ocean, that I could actually try to fill that void. So I joined an organization in the Cook Islands that was trying to, or that had an idea to create a shark sanctuary. And yeah, it really kind of, it was serendipitous in a way. But yeah, I was 30 years old when I found out I wanted to work with sharks and realized that I could do that through hard work, through dedication, and that I could make a difference.
All right. And that's, that's stories that we love to share here, because there really is no right or wrong way to get into science, or, everybody takes different paths, people change careers, and then the really lucky ones find a passion that doesn't feel like work. And I think that's something that you've been lucky enough to find, Jess. So it's really cool that you're able to share that with us today. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to Mrs. George. They want to know the cameras that we saw, the baited cameras, how do you get those back?
Okay, that's a great question too. I didn't explain it. So those cameras, the big rigs that you saw, they're actually attached to a float on the surface by just a piece of rope. And so the float will mark where the cameras are. We usually place them 500 meters apart. And then after 1 hour, they'll record on the bottom for 1 hour. We'll go back, and then we use our big muscles and we pull them up from the bottom.
All right. Let's swing through a couple more camera groups. So back to Mr. Cianfrini's group. Do you guys have a follow-up question?
Do you use different kinds of baits for different kinds of sharks?
That's also a really good question. And I think in a perfect world, the answer would be yes. So the best bait that we can use is a bait that's oily, so that when it gets into the water, it kind of hangs around, but also that the plume will go far. So because I work in really remote places, I don't often have the luxury of choosing the different type of bait. So I try to use an oily fish as often as possible, one with red flesh or one that's oily. And then we kind of go down the line. So sort of the cleaner the fish is, the least, the least we'll want to use it for the animals. And then we also try to use fresh bait, because we've had some pretty rancid stuff. And while everyone loves to believe that sharks are like the trash eaters of the ocean, and that may be true for a few species, many sharks won't even come near gross old bait. So the fresher the fish, the better it is. Good question.
All right, great question. Back to British Columbia, Mrs. Matthews' crew. Do you have another question?
Yes, I've got one. You have to stay. Right, coming around. Okay,
Hi guys.
the longest time you were on the ocean? Yeah.
Can you repeat that, please?
What is the longest time you were out on the ocean?
The longest time I've been on the ocean has been 3 weeks straight. So I'm living on a boat. So those are all different kinds of boats. I've been on boats with National Geographic that have been really nice, and I had a bed to sleep in and food, fresh food to eat that was cooked for me, which doesn't really happen in my life. And then other times I'm on large commercial fishing vessels, and those trips last about a week. So when I've been on the ocean for about, for 3 weeks to a month, it's usually on a boat that I've been lucky enough has been much more comfortable.
All right, back to Pennsylvania, Mrs. King's class. Do you have another question for us?
We do. So, have you ever been close to being bitten?
Have I been close to being bitten?
Yeah.
No. No, I haven't. I'm very, very careful when I work with the sharks on the side of the boat. We always keep our eye on what we call the pointy end, as you can imagine. I have been charged by a shark before, but that was my fault. So some of those reef sharks are quite territorial over their area. And I was consistently diving down on what we call coral bommy. It's a big coral head, doing sea turtle surveys. And this gray reef shark did not like that very much. And so I wasn't able to see that he had been coming in from the behind to try to tell me, hey, back off. But I couldn't see because I was facing the coral. And then, yeah, he charged at me a few times, which just meant, hey, back off. So, he did not bite me, but I was scared. But that would be the one time in over 10 years of working with the animals.
All right, so let's bring Mrs. Girolami's class in one more time.
Go ahead, Michael.
So in the area that you live in, what's the town like? Do you have like schools and grocery stores and stuff like that in the town you live?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So the town that I live in is on the island of Rarotonga. So there's about 9,000 people that live here. And yes, so we're actually really lucky right now because we don't even have COVID. So life is pretty normal for us, but there's no tourists. So this is a big tourist destination on the actual island I live on. And there's one picture movie theater. Actually, I think it has 2 screens. Yeah, we have grocery stores, we have restaurants. A lot of people still grow their own food around, but we can go out and buy a pizza or get a burger or get some fresh fish quite often. On the outer islands, where a lot of the footage that you saw from the videos that I showed, there are schools, but there are no grocery stores. There are no streetlights in some places. And yeah, and no runways. So you can only get there by ship, and everything that they want to buy has to be brought in by ship. So that can, and they're incredibly resilient and really good at living in this way. But it means that they sometimes go without flour for a couple of months, or without razors to shave. Men, grow big beards. Yeah, but in a lot of the islands here in the country that I live in, they now have solar power, and so they're able to have power around the clock. When I first moved here 10 years ago, some of the islands were rationing power, so they wouldn't have power for 16 hours a day.
Okay, I'm going to grab 2 more questions from YouTube. One is from Blake, wants to know, do you think it bothers the sharks to be tagged? And then Brooklyn wants to know, we saw that octopus. Have any of your cameras or equipment been stolen by another animal?
Okay, the first one is about the tagging. So yes, absolutely. The animals are very resilient. What we're doing is not killing them. We're trying to help them. But certainly wild animals don't want to be restrained. So that goes for any wild animal, and especially a big predator like some of these pelagic sharks that we have. So the good news is that nature has allowed them to evolve a response to deal with the stress. So when we catch the animal, we flip them over and so that they are belly side up, and they go into a state called tonic immobility, which is actually a stress response. So they relax, and then we can flip them back over. We work them up quickly, and then we let them hang out a second to get their kind of bearings back, and then they swim off and they're fine. There have been a lot of studies that have been done that the stress that the animal is under for that small amount of time actually doesn't cause long-term damage. And then the second question about, have I had the camera stolen? The only time I've had a camera stolen is by a local fisherman. So we were in Fiji and had dropped cameras, and the fishermen in the village, some of them, we consult with the island every time we're in a new place, but some of the fishermen didn't know what the cameras were. And so they saw this buoy in their fishing hole, and they pulled the camera up and then confiscated it. And so we had to go back and plead and beg to get the camera back. It was actually funny in the end, and everybody laughed about it, but that's the only time I've had a camera stolen.
All right, so that octopus wasn't successful in getting the bait, had to give up and didn't come after the camera. That's good. Well, I want to start off with a huge shout out to our YouTube crew. Thank you to all the great questions that came in via YouTube today. I want to give a big shout out to all of our camera classrooms. I'm going to bring you in just a second for a big goodbye and thank you. But first, I want to shout out to Jess. Jess, thank you so much for connecting to us from the Cook Islands today. Thank you for the work you're doing and sharing some of that work with us today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. This has been really fun, and you guys had really good questions. All
right, Jess, where can they follow?
That's what I was just going to say. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JessAddWater, JessAdd Water. And then my organization can be found, we have a website, sharkspacific.org. We have a YouTube channel with just a few videos up there, so you can watch and learn more about what we do. And then, yeah, you can always ask Joe if you would like to see me again. I'm a big supporter of what he's doing, and I'm so glad that I had the chance to talk to you guys all today. Thanks.
All right, excellent. Well, let's bring those classrooms in one more time. Let's get a big goodbye and thank you for Jess. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out today. We can't wait to see you in another event. Jess, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you.